Hey, this is Craig from Sulcata Grove, and today we're going to be talking about bud grafting. And I'm going to be bud grafting this white sapote. This variety is, we call it Fruit and Spice Park. It's actually a seedling that they have at Fruit and Spice Park in Homestead, and it's my personal favorite. And so we're going to try some, most of the time I do cleft grafts, and for this we're going to do some bud grafting. And there's a couple of advantages to bud grafting. It requires less plant material, so if what you have is limited, from one little stick, instead of getting a single cleft graft, you could get maybe 4 or 5 bud grafts out of it. Some plants do better with bud grafts and some don't. Citrus does phenomenally well. This is a citrus relative, and so they do typically good as well. Stuff like mangoes don't do great unless you really know. Zills has specialized in learning how to get bud grafts for mangoes to work. There's not many other people that can get it to work, so again, you have to kind of do some trial and error to find out what works for the plants you're dealing with. But I do know that it would work well on white sapote, so that's what we're going to try. So here's what we're looking for when we're doing bud grafts. You want to find buds that are just getting ready to pop out. You can see here there's a bud inside this leaf axil that is just about ready to open. Now this is on green wood. Typically for bud grafts, I like to use the wood that's hardened off a little bit. You can try both. Sometimes they'll both work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece here that's got some woody and some green growth on it, and try some of both. So I'm going to cut this back here, and you can see even on the woody parts too, we have some buds that are pretty swollen. Hopefully there'll be enough there to take, but certainly a lot of these on the green are just pushing out really nicely. So we're going to take this back to the workshop and start some grafting. Another advantage of bud grafting is that the scion size doesn't need to match up as much to your rootstock, because instead of matching the diameter, we're just cutting out a piece and we can make them match much more easily. So what I'm actually going to do to prep this, I would have done this yesterday or so. I'm going to go ahead and just clip the top out. And what that's going to do, that's going to remove the apical meristem, which is going to, instead of keeping the growth pushing upwards, it's going to be pushing out. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a bud that I really like. And I'm going to try one of these green ones because they're just pushing out the most. I don't know if you can you get that there? That's a really good bud pushing out. I'm going to take off a little bit more of the stem below it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece, a key. I'm going to cut a little piece out of this. I'm going to slice down and then slice behind it. What that's going to do is give me a little wedge that contains that bud. I'm going to do the same size slice out of this so that I can fit that in there. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut down, and I want to make this fairly wide because my scion is wide. And then I'm going to cut behind it until it meets up. And what that's going to do is that's going to take out this little wedge. You can see what that looks like. And now I'm going to try to cut a piece out with that bud that matches this as closely as possible. So where's that one? So I want to come down. You can see how that's a little notch, and this little notch should fit into the notch on the tree, and that helps kind of hold it in place, kind of wedge it down a little bit. And the better you get at this, the closer you can get to matching the shape of those two cutouts, the better it's going to be, because what you're really matching up, just like in any graft, is the little green space in between the meristem is what you want to match up, the meristem on the rootstock to the meristem on the budwood. And the closer the match is on that, the better take you're going to get. So once that's on there, I'm going to take a little piece of tape budding tape here and wrap it on, and this is to hold it in place while it grows together. I want to get this nice and tight, and if your one of your scion or your budwood is wider than the other, try to match it up on one side so that some part of your meristem is going to match up. Now when you're doing the tape, you do not want to tape on top of the bud, because then you'll just squish it and it won't have any room to grow. So I'm going above and below it, but I'm leaving the bud exposed. Nice and tight on there. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to loop it through, tie it in a knot to secure the tape. Now, that's to hold it on, but we also don't want, we got an open stem here and a delicate bud, which we don't want to dry out. So secondarily, I'm going to go over it with some parafilm just to keep it watertight. And I usually like to make sure that there's about 2 layers of parafilm over the bud. The bud can push through the parafilm, it's soft enough. Again, the parafilm is really just there for waterproofing. And that's it. Now we're going to write our label. And today's date is January 31st, 2021. Probably not the best time of year for doing this. I'm not really sure what is, but it'll work. And so then we're going to leave this for, I'd say a week, 2 weeks, without really doing anything, till just basically let this heal. And then after it's had a couple weeks, we're going to clip this, and then that will let that bud push out. And I've got some other ones that I've already done a couple of weeks ago, and I'll show you one of those that's ready to open up. So here's one I did. You can see I did this on January 2nd, so it's about a month old. And I left the top of the plant on here for about 2 weeks, and I clipped it off, and then for the last 2 weeks, you can see this is new stuff that's pushing out. And so at this point, I'm going to take the tape off. And I'm just going to slide it up the back here. And what we should see is that the bud is healed up completely, and you can still see where the bud was there. You can see a little line there, but this is all new growth here that is all coming from the bud. So this part here is rootstock, and then everything that's going to grow up is going to be, in this case, youngins. If you do see buds coming up on other parts of the rootstock, you can just pinch those off and just make sure that this one's going. And at this point, you want to make sure, again, you really want to push growth here, so I like to use soluble fertilizer, just a little bit. You can use like fish emulsion even, or kelp green, anything like that, or inorganic ones are fine too to get them started. High nitrogen, and just to get a really good start going. And there you have it. This is how bud grafts do. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.